Hello, everybody, and welcome back once again to Odin's Movie Blog. I am the critic who is a hope you're doing well, and right now, I'm actually still waiting for my video to finish uploading so that way I can put it onto social media and everything when this news has literally just broken within the past hour or so, and that is that Disney and Sony has apparently parted ways, and now nothing has been made completely dead at this point, so that the deal could potentially come in the future. But as of right now, it looks like Kevin Feige will no longer officially be involved with any future Spider-Man movies unless a deal can be brought to the table. So this is indeed breaking news. I saw that Annie Signore was just going live with it. I saw that it had just popped up in my newsfeed on Twitter as well. So thank you for everyone that's been tweeting it at me, because literally it all just came out at me at real time in this way. But this is huge because I think that most people can argue that Spider-Man was being set up in a lot of ways to be the future of the MCU, being one of the future focuses of the MCU, being one of the leaders even of the MCU going forward. And I think that this is really bad news for both Disney, and I would even say bad news for Sony as well. I think both companies are kind of in this pissing contest where they both want a crap ton of money, and neither of them really want to give up any of the money, and it really just kind of exposes just how these corporations and how these companies end up working out overall, which is once again another reason why we should just, boycott, companies like Disney especially. But at the end of the day, I think that this is going to end up hurting them both, because I think that they put in creatively a lot of focus on Disney Spider-Man specifically being, again, this central point going forward. But also, I think that Sony is not going to benefit from this, because if we know anything from their recent attempts at their own Spider-Verse movies, they have not done that well. Even Into the Spider-Verse itself, as an animated film, did not make nearly as much money as they thought that it would. They don't realize, I think, just how much Disney plays a part in their films doing well. I mean, keep this in mind, as I said before, every single movie that has made $1 billion this year is either Disney-owned or is either a production that has, that Disney has gotten a piece of, right? That they've gotten a piece of the pie. So that's the only other one being Spider-Man Far From Home, which is technically a Sony property, yet obviously we know Disney got a piece of that cut because they were working together. So I think that at the end of the day, they don't realize just how much influence Disney has, not only in getting their movies out overseas and being able to push it and to force it on the theaters, having people go to see their films and just have all that exposure that's needed in order to get that kind of attention, but also too just how they have their own lack of creativity, I think, in my own opinion, to be able to bring it any further. Because if Spider-Man is no longer part of the MCU, then that means that some of the core elements of the recent Spider-Man movies will not be able to be utilized. You'll have to only be able to focus on Tom Holland and only be able to focus on his character without talking at all about any of the other characters. And you could find yourself into even legal battles about what characters you have the right to. Like, is it part of their contracts that Sony has the right to use characters that have been used in their movies? Was that a part of their deal in case a deal ever fell through? I honestly don't know, but it's going to make me want to know a hell of a lot more about what contracts they currently have with Disney and what that actually entailed going forward. But as you can see here, this is coming from Deadline.com. So this is an exclusive breaking news story. So Marvel Studios President Kevin Feige won't produce any further Spider-Man films because of an inability by Disney and Sony Pictures to reach new terms that would have given the former a co-financing stake going forward. A dispute that has taken place over the past few months at the top, Disney and Sony, has essentially nixed Feige and the future involvement of Marvel from the Spider-Man universe, sources said. So this is very, very big news. Does this mean that it won't happen, that a deal won't come to pass? I honestly think that a deal will. I think that they're going to actually, Sony at the end of the day is going to have their hand forced, because if they try and go on their own, I really just don't think it's going to be very pretty. As much as I would love for them to see them stick it to Disney and screw any Disney's plans going forward with characters that maybe they wanted to try and have at their center. As we know, Disney will indeed adapt and will be able to push out even more and more crap garbage to be able to make up for it. So at the end of the day, I think that it would only, behoove, Sony, using a big word there, Sony to be able to end up making a deal. However, I will say that I can understand why they'd be pissed off, because apparently Disney was asking that they would get a 50-50 split monetarily. And I think that that is asking for a crap ton. It makes sense to me, because I think that Disney is using their marketing arm to be able to push these films to the point where they can make easily $1 billion, but also too, it is still owned by Sony. So I think Sony still deserves a larger piece of the pie because they own the rights. But that being said, I can understand why Disney would want to push for even more, because at the end of the day, if I were Sony and I would say, hey, you're the one that just made us a crap ton of revenue here based on the current deal, so why is it that we can't be focused here? But also, we kind of need you in order to have these films have any success whatsoever. So I think it is extremely interesting at this point in time. It says currently, Sony just simply didn't want to share its biggest franchise. Sony proposed keeping the arrangement going under the current terms, where Marvel receives in the range of 5% of first dollar gross, sources said. Disney refused. So I can understand why they would refuse that. If that, for those that don't know, Basically, when the movie is initially released, that's how much money. They get 5% of that total amount. So out of the $1 billion that they made, which we know it's Disney's influence that led to, it's Disney's characters that they lent to Sony that was able to push the film to that $1 billion mark, they would only get about 5% of that number, meaning that they wouldn't get anything from DVD, Blu-ray sales or anything like that, which honestly, I think that if I were Marvel, if I were Disney, I would say, yeah, you know what, we need a little bit bigger piece of the pie. But 50% might be asking a little bit too much. Honestly, as I said before, Sony owns the rights, so I think that they should definitely get more. But I think that Disney also kind of has a point to say that they should get more than 5% of the first dollar gross revenue. But what are your thoughts about this? Do you think that this is going to stand? Do you think that Sony is eventually going to come back to the table? Do you think that Disney might actually take a smaller piece of the pie? I think that if Disney really wants to help their own brand going forward, they will come back to the table and they will say, okay, we'll take 30% or we'll take 20%, something a little bit smaller where they're still getting more than what they were getting beforehand, but they're not getting that exact 50-50 split. So let me know your thoughts about this. Do you think Sony will come back to the table? Do you think that there will eventually be a split revenue? Or do you think that Sony will finally go ahead and continue to have, go back to its own, isolated Spider-Verse and go through another failure? I honestly don't think it would work out well for them, as I've mentioned before. If we know anything from Amazing Spider-Man and Amazing Spider-Man 2, those are two subpar Spider-Man movies that honestly I just don't think they'll be able to fully recover from without having some of Disney's influence because of the vast amount of characters that Disney owns. But anyway, let me know your thoughts about all this. Again, this is a breaking story. My other video just went live literally while recording this, so hopefully the algorithm isn't messed up, but of course it will be because YouTube sucks. Anyway, thank you so much for watching the video. Please smash the like button, give me a subscribe. It helps me out a lot. You guys are all amazing and beautiful people. Have a wonderful day. And as always, God bless.